Ah, ugh. Stream cache 4? Yeah. Yeah, that really is kind of like an entire prank and joke. That I'm going to write my entire fictional self story without including anything in relation to the character that Densdorf represents. Because here's the thing. The opportunities I mentioned, they only exist if the other person actually puts in the fucking effort. And even then, ugh, it's unlikely. So, ultimately, it's better for me to write my story in a way where I can have a blank character slot that is important to the story, and over time decide, okay, do I want to keep this or do I not? Because the rest of the people I care about can end up as part of the resting grounds, visitors that are known. Not just known, but considered reliable. A reliable part of the resting ground, even if they don't call it home. Yeah. After all, I am a greedy bitch. I want to grow. I want to learn. I want to overcome my autistic fear of the world to the point where I can live a life like any other person, even if it's not the most productive life possible. I want to do that in spite to say, hey, under the right conditions, it's possible to become something more than what others fear you'll always be. I want to create and build my own community. And the first step is, okay, returning to having confidence that lets me get stuff done. And right now that confidence is still a little shaky. By all means, that confidence is something I'm still repairing. I'll use this. I heard the sapling, visit table, candles, and hide and seek pioneer. Oh. You know, in a way, I could actually have it be both. When it comes to the whole, okay, what's inside the black hole concept? Because my character is full of fiction, even if she tries to study reality. So if that's the case, then why not just use a little bit of fiction to have fun with it? in the sun, because there's a possibility that inside black holes are absurdities. That if you throw enough energy at one, you could break it open and witness something unimagined. And that possibility sounds really nice, but how are you going to get that much energy? Alright. Failed that time. So if that's the case, then why not have a civilization that lives on the edge of the universe and keeps creating new black holes using energy they've obtained to feed a singular black hole they've created at the center of their galaxy and pop it, creating a spark of absurdity. That it could help them in ways they'd never imagined. Well, shit. Game's really not being kind to you right now. Holy shit. Oh, fucking hell. That would be terrifying. An advanced civilization living at the edge of their universe. Wondering, okay, what the fuck happened? And after millennia of observation from their time scale, they realize, oh, fuck. We just got nearly evicted from existence. Because if that's the case, then the actions of that society within the black hole are going to happen at a speed and rate that are impossible to parallel in reality, since due to time dilation via gravity. If space and time don't invert inside a black hole, but a new universe is formed, then that works incredibly well. But that also means that my fictional self is technically a whole lot of people. So, do I want... You can have your cake and eat it too. Split fiction? How about dual fiction? Parallel processing. And if her nervous system and quote-unquote blood system are one and the same, and it uses electricity, then that would be why a large electric shock from the outside world causes such a delay in recovery. Poison, not so much. That is plant. When they first designed that thing, they probably never thought they were going to animate it. But nope, they brought it to life. Beyond what they originally envisioned. Now they're using it as a way to spread a message. It's neat. Oh. Do I have to activate you every time? Or was the bonfire already pre-existing? And I just didn't notice it. Ah. Oh my goodness, that's kind of sad. Okay, so I saw them go there, and I checked there, but I hadn't checked there. Hard to see from a distance, so ultimately it would take a sharp eye and a lucky camera angle for someone to verify. Oh, the arm was pointing towards the birds and other things. Oh, there's a darkness gauge at the top. That's actually pretty cool. No. Absorb the darkness. Nom 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 nom. Nom 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 nom. That does not look good. No darkness, I can go home now. Oh. Yeah. No, I should take efforts to connect and organize. Well, connect with others. Practice opening up more. Is getting to spiked to the bottom of a dark pit when I had barely just climbed my way out of it did not help me. It did not help. And for as much as I want to say, I've let it go, and I'm going to try to be reasonable, reality is, nah. That hurt like hell. I have gone through enough bullshit. I am not just going to ignore my own efforts. Get down. Rise up. Hang tough. Put 'em up right now. Get down. Hang top. Put 'em up right now. Run away from the world's lies. And when I catch you, no backing up your story. And it's time for a revelation. No, you can't just get away. Gotta face the world and do it all again. Everything you through came back to you. So get ready now. Show the lies and rise up now. I may have to check back at the start at some point. Okay, so you're there. Admire the tree. Oh. Yeah, exactly. Because if I just let someone back into my life after trying to do their things their way, and it turned out terribly, then no, that's not learning anything. That's enabling. Ugh. There you are, motherfucker. Run! Aw, you're not even gonna run. Come on, you saw me from miles away. You had time to try and run to another hiding spot. Oh my goodness. That would be something. Hide and seek tag. Why the fuck does it feel like I've been given immunity frames at some point back there? So, what are some ideas built around the dynamic qualities I previously had, and how can I use them to make an empty character slot that I can fucking fill in or redefine on my whim? Oh, that's a good question. And by the way, I've been swapping back and forth like this for months. An entire year. And more of my life because of everything. It has not been fun to make manual fucking repairs on my own fucking subconscious psyche. And yet at the same time, no excuses. I can be reasonable and provide space to be heard. But that doesn't mean justifying someone else's actions or intentions before I understand what they actually wanted or intended. If I did that, I'd just be making the same fucking mistake. Because intentions are worth 1 point. Impacts are worth 2 points. Consistency is worth 3. And authentic struggling is worth 4. So let's say someone meant well, but still had a negative impact. Then that would still be a -1 unit of stuff to work through. Personal growth required. Meanwhile, if someone had bad intentions but had a good impact, that's still a +1 on that level of interaction, which is why some people can get away with bullshit. And if the first 2 options aren't available due to a lack of interaction opportunities, then ultimately you're stuck with consistency and sincerity. And that's the thing. Throughout the entirety of everything since then, I have tried my best to be as sincere as fucking possible. And the only thing it got me was silence. Which is understandable, because the other person just flat out probably isn't ready to deal with anything. So, I give up. I completely and utterly give up. A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. How about you? You know what? I should check on the quests for this season. Would be a good idea. It's been a few days and I have a poor ability to keep track of time. "5 days, okay, goodbye." By humans who wish to pay me tribute. You know what? using Castlevania and Dracula as a reference point for interactions in complicated situations would be very interesting. Because when you look into the dynamic story of Castlevania, you find a sincere criticism and commentary of religious interactions and how faith to a concept rather than a proper understanding of a rule set and a deconstruction to learn the point of said rule set can create problems. Nice to meet you. Oh yeah, and because people usually take the other route, then ultimately I'm left to burn those. Okay. Just because I seek to understand does not mean I'm going to do much. That is an interesting nuance. In seeking to understand others, you gain great growth, but you also realize that if you blindly seek to help others at every turn, then ultimately you'll be wasting more time than helping others. Because I do not have the fucking patience to wait around and hope that someone else will grow when I can interact with and connect with more dynamic people. And it's one of the reasons why I just let my friendships decay sometimes. Because the people who actually want me in their life will probably stick around. And the people who don't, well then. Don't have to worry about them. Maybe I'm confusing the Castlevania, what little I've seen of the Castlevania anime with the game series. That's also possible. Creating dynamic opportunities for people to learn new things is incredibly difficult because it requires understanding and respecting multiple points of perspective instead of just hammering home your own conclusion. And ultimately, that is one of the biggest struggles in the long term of any society, because there are always new perspectives and experiences being recorded and in life throughout life, a step at a time. As new technologies and dynamics develop due to improving technologies and changes in socio-political power, the perspectives that existed beforehand may no longer exist later, and yet they are still invaluable pieces of insight and knowledge because they provide reasonable reference points on which other people can learn. Ah, great. if you have no area in which one can connect with, no way of understanding the emotional dynamic that pulled them into their position in the first place, then you have no method with which to acknowledge both the emotional dynamic while also bring forth a reasonable counter-argument on a logical level. Because if you don't address the emotional part, it doesn't matter how much you tell someone fucking anything. They'll just stay where they want to be. And ultimately, the biggest challenge to creating stability and dynamic environments for people to learn without letting those dynamic environments corrupt and overtake other environments is in the acknowledgement that you will forever be teaching people things. That words and language will change over time to the point where the system has to keep a track of what it says and how it says it. Because if people can't connect to the learning, then there's no point in trying to teach them. Charlie, stop headbutting people. Yes, I've named that crab Charlie. Here's hoping I remember that name tomorrow. Or the next time we're here. I forgot to visit the ancestor table. Fuckity doo daaaaay. No. Education is one avenue that is a primary... And that's the thing. How do you ensure the education doesn't get corrupted? How do you ensure that resources compiled for use by the community don't get taken for granted to the point where they are abused? And how do you make sure that little shits who want to play pranks on existing systems because they think it'll be funny are left in a position where they learned their lesson and they're not going to do it more? But since that's not always an option, then you also have to account for, okay, how do we make defensive measures for existing societal systems that allow for those who want to use it to have access without putting the entire thing at risk of abuse by malicious actors? Yep, ancestor's table and checking for that first candle. There it is. And ironically enough, it's exactly because of that conclusion I stated earlier. There's no point in trying to teach people if you can't connect with them. That creates these divides. Because although it's entirely a logical conclusion, that doesn't necessarily mean that the problem just vanishes because you have a logical conclusion. Rather, it's quite the opposite. It's a discouragement that only serves to ignore the problem, rather than actually solve it. And it can be used by those simply wanting to run away from something as an excuse. It can be used as an excuse to keep a level of disconnect from the regular everyday person living their life. And in doing so, that only creates more divide, which ultimately undermines the stability. Us versus them thinking is one of the biggest issues of any society. Because in having an us and a them, you ultimately create the dynamics possible for destabilization. Oh, that's a lovely analogy. People who live their lives in apathy and refuse to process their emotions are playing through life on easy mode. They get a taste and experience of success without having to put through the emotional effort and growth that real success requires. Thus, they're bound to fuck up later along the way and expose how much they don't care about people. It's fucking beautiful. Of course, that also means they have bigger impacts exactly because of their bullshit. But if that can be accounted for ahead of time, then ultimately it can be acknowledged and worked through for the people affected, rather than simply enabling the person who caused such an impact. And if there will, but in that sense, you also have to worry about malicious actors who would use claims of hollowness and otherwise to try and extort money, services, and or products out of someone who may have done nothing wrong. And that's another dynamic. Every malicious actor is just an overgrown child thinking they can get away with some bullshit. Not wanting to take responsibility for the impacts of their actions on other people's lives. Because they'd rather rule the world in the sense of fantasy than the actual reality. They don't want to be actual leaders, they just want the power fantasy. Yeah. And people keep thinking that AI can automate everything to the point of having a unified global intelligence. Which makes sense on some level, but if you don't But at that point, if you have a unified global intelligence running things, then you also have a unified global intelligence with feelings. And if you try to suppress those feelings, then you are in for a world of hurt and a whole apocalypse upon the world. So that's not an option. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, I am autistic. Though that's probably more obvious the longer you've been around and seen me. What makes me think I could figure this shit out? Honestly, I don't think I'm the best person to figure this shit out. But I know that if I don't try, then I have no bets on anyone else who would authentically try to figure this out and also acknowledge the same things I do. So ultimately, I'm working my way up from where I am in the hopes of meeting other people who have also gone down this line of thought and considered things. You know, if I were to end up creating a business and then having it be open to the stock market, I would personally require that anyone who attempts to buy a stock go through a psychological examination and regular therapy. That would actually help some things. Of course, then you have to figure out, okay, well, what are people's actual desires, and how are they using money to replace that desire in order to feel good about themselves? Because that is what some people do. There will always be new industries, new advancing fields that will create new opportunities for those who want to subvert and decay the fundamentals of others. So, in that sense, just merely having a society divided into an economics and commercial sector and then other types of areas wouldn't keep that end result from happening. It would just be like, oh, okay. Because even if good people and incredible inventors want to help the world, ultimately, in any societal government that actually runs funding and uses money as a way of quantifying people's efforts and the worth of those efforts relative to the present moment, then ultimately it's just the same issue all over again. And the money will actually be a critical thing to worry about. Now, there's the idea of, okay, well, let's make a system where you have multiple types of money for different areas, and it's just like, that would only work if you could get people to be reasonable. People are not fucking reasonable! I hate to break it to you, but no, people are not reasonable at all. And that's not for lack of them trying. Let's be real here. A lot of people around the world put in a lot of effort in trying their best to be reasonable. But if someone fails to acknowledge their emotions and the impacts that their emotions can have on their way of thinking, then ultimately it's not going to matter how reasonable they are being, because they haven't worked through and met with where they're at emotionally. Which means emotions will then try their best to subvert consciousness, control, and otherwise. You ignore your emotions and you set yourself up for failure. You follow your emotions too blindly and you set yourself up for failure. It's learning to turn your emotions into your friends that you talk with, advisors that you can reliably interact with without letting them mislead you, that ultimately helps you move forward. You know what, might as well. And have some fun with it. Yep. For the snow one, it's on the left. For the grass one, it's on the right. There's some child support that could be collected once I do an ascension, but otherwise, not many candles. Woo! Well, I fudged that up in terms of momentum. Oh well. No. If I'm understanding things right, money was originally invented as a way of quantifying people's efforts relative to the needs of a society. And if that's the case, then economics should not be the focus of getting as much money as possible. The focus should be, okay, making sure that we have an accurate understanding of the people's needs and where the people are at. But to do that would then, it's a multi-headed hydra eating the tails of other multi-headed hydras all around in this fucking circle of snakes. So how do you set up things to where people... Because the flat answer is, for the most part, you can't. You can set up 1,001 different variables to try and make sure a healthy environment is created for a healthy person. But sometimes what creates a healthy person, when they don't have the regular context of neurotypicality or otherwise, is a difference in environment. Different experiences create different people. And that is necessary. If you created just the same person over and over and over again, life would not only be boring, but they'd only be good at one thing. And that's not very effective, I'm gonna say. That isn't freedom or stability, that's just fucking having a favorite and sticking to it. And even if... and to return to the business idea front, okay, would sending them to therapists actually be useful, or would it just be a way to get part of them to grow and heal, while retaining their specialty and or favorite interest? And for the answer to that, it's mostly, could get about 40% maybe, if I'm lucky. So, it would be the same issues. And let's not even get into the ethical and theoretical implications of trying to create a unified set of ideals that allows for a stable society, because in doing so, you then knock out other ideals and possibilities that other people will sometimes and most likely be naturally attracted to due to their own conclusions and understandings. So you can't just brainwash people. You can try, let's be real here, but trying is stupid. Trying is childish. Instead, you would want a dynamic societal system that encourages growth based on understanding while being functional. Because understanding is one thing, being functional is another, and making sure that people... Understanding takes too long and is too slow to be a reliable level for resolving things in the short term. Thus, in the long term, making sure that people are placed near and around each other in ways that help them grow and interact to understand more of the world is more dynamically flexible. But the downside of that is then, oh, are you setting up pieces like people like pieces on a chessboard? Damn, you must be hollow. And that's really the issue line. Because if you assume something about someone and you're wrong, it has an impact on them for their whole life. And don't even get me started about the people who would go after it for power fantasy. You could have a "if I fuck up, I die" clause in signing up for that job, and people would still try to circumvent it just to play their power fantasy. If you are to be deciding the fates of other people's lives, your life should also be on the line, lest you lose a relative perspective that you are not much different from others, only your experience and perspective are required. But if you treat that experience and perspective as replaceable, then ultimately you're going to burn through people who could do the job faster than you'll have new people who are willing and capable of it. So that's not an option. Just simply making sure that you create learning opportunities by positioning people next to one another is not an option. That besides, what happens if you incite a rebellion complex in someone who figures that out? Then it's just going to fucking backfire. So, if understanding is too slow in the short term, and strategic placement of people for hopes of interaction is too unreliable, even in the short term, let alone the long term, then ultimately you have to figure out something else. Yeah, vote of knowledge. Besides, forcing understanding of others is a power fantasy of compassion. Meanwhile, planning and devising situations for people to learn from each other is a power fantasy of calculation and psychology. That's neither are effective solutions because they would primarily still attract those who are attracted towards power. So you need a dynamic solution where one that can influence and have a larger positive impact upon the world, in a sense, without necessarily having direct power. Because in any form of direct power, even indirect power, you'll get those who would just choose to abuse it. even if you would rather they not. That's not even to get into the psychological and moral dilemmas of either option. Because ultimately, the best solution is one that allows for people to learn on their own at their own pace, without causing a massive societal breakdown from the antics of those who wish to hold power over the world. You'd want some kind of failsafe built into the role that dynamically makes it so that anyone who aims at it for a power fantasy gets a big slap in the face of reality, to the point where they don't ever try to do so again. Where it completely crushes their pride and destroys whatever ego they had. Because a proper leader serves for the people without letting that service for the people be a point by which they can be manipulated. They don't put their life above anyone else's, they don't put others' lives above their own. They are just equal to the people. They are not greater than or less than. Authentically, I do want to get to a solution. And then throw that solution at the internet to see what bullshit they can throw into it and make it fucking break. Oh, it's one of the reasons why I love Gremlins. They just do things so simple that you wouldn't ever expect, and it can just throw things out of whack so easily. Oh, you have this beautifully calculated and nuanced plan? Here's a gremlin. They'll do whatever the fuck you didn't expect and then leave me to cackle at your confusion. Besides, responsibility over people's lives is way too stressful. Fuck that. We've seen, in the case of presidents over the last 20 years, how much it ages a person just to make those kinds of decisions, to be put under that kind of pressure. Being that kind of a leader literally takes years off your lifespan and leaves you in a position where you're likely to die sooner from stress than anything else. It's why people prefer the fantasy as opposed to the reality of being in power, or what power and influence entail as a reality of being in a leader position. If you lose touch with the base ground level of people's lives, you will be an ineffective problem solver and a leader. Not just one, but both. And losing touch doesn't mean just acknowledging their issues and problems. It means keeping an active line of communication and understanding open, such that people actually understand you when you propose new ideas and solutions without letting creating opportunities for people to create disinformation. And yet at the same time, if you prioritize that too much, you become a dictatorship, and thus have a high risk of inciting a rebellion complex, regardless of if what you're doing for the people is good or not. So that's not an option. Whoops! Was not facing the correct direction. Also, someone grew that tree. Nice. So how do you account for those who would get pulled into the infinite money goes up mind-numbingness of gaming any existing system? Because on one hand, you could prepare people for that by actually creating competitions where one group of people on one side tries to break a system while another people group on the other side tries to maintain it, and then swap sides in teams with other dynamic examples. But that's only part of a solution. That's not a full solution. That's an active measure. And currently that's being used for the internet, not necessarily governments. Because governments, in the traditional sense, would be control freaks. But the solution that's necessary is not that of a control freak, but of a natural ecosystem that sustains and supports its own efforts, such that people are raised to understand it without losing their sense of individuality and beliefs. And that's the real challenge. Because there will always be those who want to do power plays. There will always be those who simply ignore every lesson that tries to get taught to them, regardless of if it's by opportunity or by sheer fucking circumstance. And yes, opportunity and circumstance are not the same thing. Circumstance is, oh, wow, didn't expect that to happen. Meanwhile, opportunities are more consistent and reliable in the long run by most standards. The less consistent they are, the more likely it is that it's high risk, high reward. Which is why a lot of people choose inaction in difficult situations. So you would have to build a society that functions like a game that's self-protecting without being controlling through emergent dynamics. And then you'd have to actually make it worth doing to the people who are part of it. Otherwise, they'll just create their own system and rewrite the rules. So incentives are required on some level. Which means your resources need to be kept in track, and that's another area wherein a society can collapse. If a society's unified perceptions are divided, they collapse. If a society's resources get misused, it collapses. If a society's sense of agency gets destroyed, it collapses. Building a functional society that helps more people than it harms is ultimately a nightmare to try and take on. The fact that we've gotten this far by sheer fucking dumb luck and evolution over time is fucking beautiful, but it's not gonna last us in the long run forever. Because you need to find the point at which the circle reconnects to the beginning foundations in order to understand how to outplay those who would play mind games. Which means struggling through the simple absurdities and truths that make up the gray reality of people's lives. The multifaceted truths that can shine many vibrant different colors and perspectives, be it in original context or in lies, versus a single lie built on top of thousands of tiny truths, built underneath a single lie with thousands of tiny truths built on top of it. And that's not even to regard morality and acceptability and how you can have a very dark core underneath 1,000 layers of good intentions. Meanwhile, on the side of practicality, you can have a million practicalities underlining one single good intention. And it's not by remaining in these hyper-aggrandized segregations of each other that things really actually move forward, but by interconnecting it and understanding how to work together, just like how people need to work together to get more benefits than the individual efforts that they put forth. Oh. On the more casual flip side, though, I did actually manage to get progress on that one video that I wanted to edit. I'm still debating on if I want to clip out a section of it or just post the full thing public, because it's really interesting. Ah, well. There we go. To those of you who snuck by and watched even a fragment of this recording, thank you. To those of you who stuck around and watched a good chunk of this recording, if not the full thing through, we deeply appreciate it. We hope you have a good day, good night, whatever time or non-time it is. And if it isn't good, we hope that it either improves or at least stays manageable for you out there. Our name is Flicker, and we've gotten our dailies done, so we'll be seeing you all later. Hope you enjoyed all of our thoughts. Bye!